If you want to change your life, change your habits. I'm Shireen Skeepers, founder of For Your Life and host of this podcast dedicated to exploring and understanding the power of habits. Join me as I speak with experts and everyday people who have transformed their lives through the power of habit. Because this is for your life. This is about habits and it's about time. Your time starts now.
My parents were not in a position to pay the fees, enormous fees, to go to the Manhattan School of Music. So he believed in me. He spoke to all the right people in New York and said, can we possibly make an exception? Can we find a bit of extra money, scholarship money for this girl? And literally, I remember the day I went home and said, Mum and Dad, I am going to New York. It's going to happen. I'm leaving in 4 weeks.
That's Rebecca telling her parents that she's heading to New York to study at the prestigious Manhattan School of Music. In this episode, I speak with Rebecca about the habits that were necessary to truly master something. We learn about mindset, perseverance, and what happens when you aim for everything but expect nothing. Rebecca, so lovely to see you. I'm very excited to be recording this episode with you. So, you wanted to learn to play the piano, didn't you?
Yes.
At a very, very young age. But not just play the piano, become a concert pianist. So you began studying music at the tender age of 3 years old. Tell me about that.
I did start learning at 3, but even before I was born, I was probably hearing music because my mother was a beautiful pianist. Even when she was pregnant, she was playing some lovely music. I found out later that my great-grandparents were also musicians back in the gold mining days, or conductors and brass musicians. So definitely the environment was there and conducive to me being a musician. When I was about 3, my mother decided to become a Suzuki piano teacher, and it was specifically targeted for 3-year-olds, and I happened to be that age. And apparently I used to drag her to the piano and say, please teach me, because she was teaching other students. And I just had a love right from the beginning. And when I was about 6 or 7, I've got a little book still, a little journal that I had when I was a child, and it says, what do you want to be when you grow up? And it says, concert pianist, nothing else. Wow. In underline and in bold. And from that moment, I was just so focused on that goal, and I never let it go.
And that's a really interesting point because when you read the literature about habits, one of the things they talk about is identity, self-identity. Right. And I know when you and I spoke in the cafe a couple of weeks ago, you spoke about that moment when you started referring to yourself as a concert pianist. Like, can you tell me a little bit about that shift?
That was interesting because I was about 14 and I was invited to perform at the Sydney Opera House, which was so exciting. It was with Hazel Hawke, who was the Prime Minister's wife at the time. Bob Hawke was the Prime Minister. And I guess I'd already been studying for about 10 years. I'd already been working on my craft for that long. And I met a wonderful girl about the same age, and I was just absolutely struck by her confidence. I was quite shy. She was very comfortable around adults. She'd done that her whole life, and she would go up to people and say, I'm a concert pianist. And I thought, well, I don't need to wait until I finished a music degree in music. I've already been studying this for 10 years. Like if you go to university, you might study for 6 years to become a doctor. I'd already been doing it for 10 years. I thought, well, I'm already getting paid to perform. So this is it. This is happening. It's not, just this idealistic goal anymore. It's now.
Wonderful. You are. I am. I love that. I also love the story you told me about how you just decided you were going to go to New York.
Oh, yes.
Tell me how we do that.
Oh, yes.
Just decide something and then it happens.
Okay, so when I was about 16, my beautiful piano professor, Philip Cowan, he came out to Australia. He's from New York, and he heard me play and he was very impressed. And I think he remembered me. He came back 2 years after that. And I think in life, timing is important too. It has to be the right timing. So when he came back again, I was 18 or 19. I just finished my Bachelor of Music degree and I was looking for the next step. I really wanted to go overseas. And the only problem was there was a bit of an obstacle. When I met him, all of the auditions had already been held for the Manhattan School of Music. They'd already given away all the scholarship money.
So you just gave up, did you?
So my parents were not in a position to pay the fees, enormous fees, to go to the Manhattan School of Music. So he believed in me. He spoke to all the right people in New York and said, can we possibly make an exception? Can we find a bit of extra money, scholarship money for this girl? And literally, I remember the day I went home and said, Mum and Dad, I am going to New York. It's going to happen. I'm leaving in 4 weeks. And I went over and I did my audition 1 week before school started. fortunately, it went well. They gave me the money and I started my master's degree there.
What did your parents say?
Well, I remember my father's reaction. It was like, oh, don't be ridiculous. What are you talking about? We don't know anyone in America. And I just was excited. I was excited for the next adventure.
How wonderful.
Yeah.
So you are a 19-year-old in New York for the first time.
Yes.
And you are on your own and you have a lot to prove. You are surrounded by amazing talent.
Yeah.
How are you coping with your self-confidence, your, I guess, feelings of doubt, self-doubt? How's that going?
I think all I can remember from that time is that I was just more determined than ever and just really focused on being the best I could be, yeah? And so there was a competition held in the first month, and it was for people all over the world who'd come to Manhattan School of Music and I actually fortunately won that and played with the orchestra, Manhattan Symphony Orchestra, within about a month with an incredible conductor, and I played Saint-Saëns piano concerto. And
wow.
I think that when you watch that performance, I can see the determination, I can see the absolute, drive at that time. I didn't feel homesick. I just felt like it was a great adventure. I stayed at International House and it was the most incredible facility. There were 800 students. We all had something in common. We're all in New York for the first time. And I think there were about 100 countries represented within those 800 students.
Gee.
So can you imagine the people I met from all over the world, from Africa, from Europe, from
Amazing.
Asia. And every night there was a massive cafeteria and you could meet and sit on any table you like and just meet new people.
Wow.
So
wonderful. So then you came back to Australia and you won the Young Australian of the Year. So tell me about that. How did you find out you had won, and tell me about that experience?
Well, I was actually still in New York finishing my master's degree when I found out. I was about 20 now and I was absolutely amazed. It's such a great honour. I think what I loved the most was being able to travel the country. So part of the award was 6 months of touring. And so I visited some very beautiful places and even some remote towns in Northern Territory and met some Aboriginal communities. I loved the idea of inspiring young children then, and I think my focus then was to try and make classical music more accessible to people.
Yeah, wonderful. You mentioned to me that you were incredibly shy,
Yes.
and now you were thrust into the limelight and having to travel around and talk to large groups of people. How on earth did you get over that fear?
That was so challenging because I remember all the way through with my performing, I remember saying I would rather perform for 2,000 people than do a 5-minute interview. I was terrified. I was so shy. But I had no choice. I think the thing was, how did I overcome the fear? Well, I was just thrown in the deep end and I had to swim. And what's really fascinating to me is that what was a fear became an actual love. And I find that incredible. I use that now in my life for sort of, I guess, inspiration, knowing that just because you have a fear, it shouldn't become an obstacle. You can definitely overcome it. And so after giving all of the, often I'll be speaking in front of politicians and, it wasn't easy. But then I decided to find a company who did public speaking, and I did motivational talks in schools. And I probably visited about 150 schools over the next few years in Victoria, New South Wales, drove myself around New South Wales, going to all these different schools, and actually really enjoyed it. And I thought, I can do this.
Amazing.
Why not?
Amazing. It's a wonderful story. So if we fast forward now to when I met you about 10 years ago, and you were teaching music from your home in your studio,
yes.
and you had your beautiful little boy.
Yeah.
And then you decided to open up a performing arts school with your husband. And that was an amazing journey from where you started to where you are today. So can you talk a little bit about Kidko?
Yeah, well, I guess the way I see it, the first 20 years of my life was very focused on, my career and becoming the best pianist I could be. And then there was a moment after coming back from New York where I just didn't want to see the piano. I didn't want to perform. It was a little bit like burnout. I went through that stage of I want to explore other things. So I became interested in journalism, and I made documentaries for Channel 31 and had a bit of fun, doing, exploring other areas. And then I actually studied naturopathy. So I'm actually a naturopath as well. I have never practiced as a naturopath, but I learned so much over that 6 years of study. So I explored a few other things, and then, of course, came back to music. But this time it was very, very different. It wasn't about me anymore. It was about the children, and it was about the next generation of kids and giving them the opportunity. And it all stemmed from, I guess when my son was 4 or 5 years of age, he was at kinder and primary school. And this is the age where parents are chatting to each other saying, oh, you're trying out basketball or dance or music. And they knew I was a teacher because I had taught since I was 16 years of age. Even when I was in New York, I taught music. Always loved working with children. And I guess that love also stemmed from my mother. As a child, I sat and around the corner and listen to my mother teach. And she's so incredible with students. She's 76 now, got so much energy, and she's still teaching. Amazing. And so I've always loved teaching. So I'm back with teaching. And I think that my husband was the one that came up with the idea of a school. Because I had my 40 students and I thought, but then there were so many people on my wait list. It made me sad. I thought I want to be able to teach so many more children, but I can't. I've got to put them on a wait list, which is like 3 years long. So Greg, my husband, would, do his walks, and he'd often come back and say, I found this great place. We should open a school. And I actually was not even for the idea. I just thought, that sounds too hard. You've got all your overheads. I'd never run a business as such like that. I'd had my own music school, but in a much smaller way. Anyway, he was pretty determined, and I thought, okay, let's give this a go. So we took the plunge, I guess, because it's not easy to start your own business.
No. So, Rebecca, one doesn't just pluck a performing arts school out of thin air and will it into existence. It takes a lot of hard work, and it doesn't happen overnight. So I know there were times where it was very stressful financially and otherwise. How did you keep persevering? What kept you going?
Well, look, we were well aware of the fact that so many small businesses fall within, the first 5 years. And the amount of times that Greg and I said, oh, that's it. It's too much work. We're going to close the doors. It happened a lot. It was half joking, but it was half real. And I think that what kept us going is our belief in the dream and the goal, to have as many children learning music and having a great experience with inspirational teachers. And we had kids doing sing, dance, acting classes as well as private lessons. We held holiday programs. We're not doing that now because during COVID we had to give up our space, but we're still doing 14 concerts a year. And that's probably my favourite part of Kidko, is seeing the kids perform and seeing them come in a little bit frightened. I get up as the MC and I try and make them really comfortable, and we have some fun, and we have like some little blowing up balloons, and we make it like a party. Yeah. And to see them look so proud of themselves when they've overcome their fear, and I talk about that in the concerts too. I still use my experience from motivational speaking, and that's my highlight. I love it so much because we've got about 360 students learning music every week now, and that to me is incredible. Like I remember after the first year when we got to 100 students, I just thought, that's the pinnacle. Like
couldn't possibly get any bigger.
And it kept going. And then it kept growing. And I think some of my teachers used to laugh at me because I'd always say, we'll cap at 200. That's enough. And then we'll cap at 300.
Wow.
But now it's like, we've found a great team. Our teachers are just magnificent. We spend a lot of time interviewing and getting the best staff that we can.
Wonderful. Yeah. So let's talk about that because we talk about, everyone talks about goals, and you have to have these goals and they're important, but you don't just achieve a goal without process, structure, people, support around you. And to me, like if I listen to your life's journey, you seem to have had some amazing people around you at the right time.
Yes, absolutely. My first big inspiration would be my mother, and she instilled so many values in me. One of them was the step-by-step process. Because naturally, I guess it's important to know your weaknesses and your strengths. And one of my weaknesses is that I can get distracted easily. So she kept me on track. She understood my personality so well. She'd draw up charts where I'd, put little stickers in every time I practiced every day. She understood me so well, and she worked with me that way. And even though I felt no pressure from my parents to be a concert pianist, it was all self-driven, I still think I couldn't have done it without her. And so it was step-by-step process, because becoming a concert pianist, like you say, it doesn't happen overnight. It probably takes about 10 years to really reach the pinnacle of playing. And so that's not natural in my personality. I'm impatient. I want things to happen right now and then. And so I had to learn that skill, and that's helped me with lots of other areas in life.
And I want to talk about that. Absolutely. This is a podcast about habits and habits for your life. So one of the reasons I really wanted to talk to you is to understand what were those habits, those little things that you did every day that got you to that point where you were a concert pianist, where you built a music school catering to 300 students. Like, what are the little things that you did every day that got you there?
Yeah. Okay, so I've always been a big believer in consistency. You think of that famous line, slow and steady wins the race. There's actually a lot of wisdom in that, because you just have to do small increments of work and just keep doing the same thing, repeat.
And even if you don't see the immediate outcome of that habit, of that behavior, you have to keep doing it because you know over time you'll see the benefit. There's a time delay in that behavior.
Yes. And often I think children now are getting the immediate gratification from their video games. And so I really think it's important, and that's what I love about them learning music, because it does teach them that discipline and that feeling of, okay, I'm not going to immediately improve, but it will happen.
Yes.
Yeah, and I always talk to my students about that.
So we spoke about habits, we spoke about having the right people around you, and also about understanding your weaknesses and making sure that you are not delusional.
Yeah. You have to be realistic and self-aware. Okay, because we all have weaknesses and we all have strengths. But the weaknesses can be worked on. And if you find the right people to support you along the way, which I have, I've been so fortunate to have incredible mentors and music teachers. They've all believed in me. They've all been supportive. But that doesn't always happen. Sometimes, and even with school, there'll always be those teachers that you remember that believed in you and made a big difference in your life. So you have to hold on to those moments and realise that even though people say, oh, you can achieve anything you want as long as you want it enough, I don't really believe in that. I think, if you've got learning difficulties, you might do beautiful things in your life and find your path, but you might not necessarily be a space scientist or an astronaut. So I think it's good to be realistic with your dream. You have to see a dream and a vision, but I think it's within your capabilities is important. Otherwise, it's only going to come, result in disappointment.
Absolutely. And I do think that having that sense of the bigger picture, like for you, being able to provide art and music to so many children who want it, that also really must motivate you and drive you to keep going.
Yes, absolutely. I'm also at the point in my life now where we've had the school for 10 years, and I really want to, the next chapter will be to bring music to nursing homes is another passion of mine. I know that when I visited my grandfather many, many years ago, I'd walk around and I think, without music, it can be a dull place. And I know that when you play music for older people, they just light up. It makes their day. So at the moment, I'm in discussions with some of the local nursing homes, and we're going to bring music to them every week.
And what a great way to get the kids experience in performing in a kind of a less stressful environment where you have very enthusiastic audience.
It's a non-threatening environment.
It's a non-threatening environment.
It's perfect.
Yes.
And with so many children, even though we hold 12 concerts a year, they only get one performance for the year.
It's not enough.
No, I want them to perform more.
Lovely.
So I'm excited about this new venture.
That's wonderful. So we've spoken about your habits, the people around you, your environment, your will, your determination. Is there anything else that you think has played a major part in achieving your goals and the success that you've had? Yeah.
When I was about 15, I went through a phase of just loving quotations. All the books that have all those inspirational quotes. I still love them. And I decided to write my own. My auntie gave me a beautiful book. And at the front, in gold, I wrote, "Aim for everything, expect nothing." And I look back on that quote sometimes and I think, what did I actually mean by that? And it makes a lot of sense, really. I mean, I guess the first part of it, aim for everything. That's probably about having the goal and the dream. You're not allowing obstacles to get in the way. Yeah. So aiming for everything, to me, meant, why can't I be a great concert pianist? Why can't I go to New York? I like to ask why not rather than why. And the other part, expect nothing, to me, is all about expectations. So it's not that I want to expect nothing, but it's about I'm not going to be so disappointed. I think anything in life, if you set great expectations that something's going to be amazing, you can only be disappointed.
Correct. It's your happiness. It's inversely proportionate to your level of expectation.
Yeah. And it sounds negative, but it's actually inspiring to me. Yeah. When you say expect nothing.
I love it. It's lovely. We'll definitely quote that one in the show notes. Is there anything that you have sort of words of wisdom or advice you can give to people who want to learn to play the piano? I often come across people, because I play a little bit myself, come across people who say, oh, it's my biggest regret in life that I never learned to play the piano and I'm too old now. What advice would you have for those people?
The amount of time that I've had people come up at a performance and say, oh, I wish my mother had made me learn. And it is the biggest regret. I think that there is a stat about that 20% of people have learnt the piano, but 80% of people wish they had.
Oh, really?
Yes.
That's a good,
Yeah, especially adults, And I do tell my students this sometimes, just so they understand that their parents are, spending the money and giving them a great opportunity, so don't waste it. And obviously, with learning music comes practice. Most of my students in the school, they love their lesson. They love music. That's why they've come. but they don't always love doing the work. Yeah, but without the work, you can't proceed and you can't get excited about the new piece and whatever. So we talk about that a lot. And no matter what you do, I mean, if you want to have a great goal and, become really fit, it's going to involve going to the gym or whatever exercise is your preference. There's going to always involve hard work. There's nothing wrong with hard work.
And hard work that you're not seeing the immediate benefit or reward of on a day-to-day. You don't see it in real time. It's only when you look back and go, gee, I started out playing chopsticks and now look at me playing Moonlight Sonata and it's taken 5 years. Or
That's right.
Yeah. I remember when I was little and I played the piano and I had lessons and I also wanted to quit. And I said to my mother, it's too hard and I don't want to do this anymore. I want to give up. Yeah. And she said, sure, you can quit if you want, but you may regret that for the rest of your life.
Right.
And she's literally scared the hell out of me. And I'm like, keep going.
You kept going.
Kept going, yes.
Look, it doesn't mean that music is for everyone. I mean, some people will be, go into completely different areas. But I think that having an experience with music will stay with you forever.
Definitely. So you and I are both very passionate about music and what it gives young people, music or art in any form of its expression. Would you agree that it's something that should be taught in some form or another?
Well, look, there's been so much scientific research into music and how it does help with academic studies. And I love the fact that it is one of the only pursuits that uses the left and the right side of the brain, the creative side and the analytical side. And, of course, there's a lot of correlation with maths as well. And so, like I said, even if a child does not pursue music as a career, I think it's just a beautiful skill to have. And hopefully it will teach them many things that will help with their academic life as well.
Yeah, I agree. So what's next for you? You've spoken about doing some community work, which I think is absolutely wonderful. I actually remember as a young kid going and playing in aged care homes where my grandparents were, and I loved it. It was such a lovely experience. What's in the future for you?
Well, yeah, and I am excited about the nursing homes. I think the most incredible thing that I learned is that when I found out that many stroke victims who lose their ability to speak, as soon as they hear a song that they recognise, they can actually sing those words. Once the music stops, they can't speak. I mean, that to me just blows me away. I can't believe it.
It is incredible. And I've seen contestants on America's Got Talent who stutter but then can sing. It's incredible.
I know. The power of music.
Yeah.
But my next venture, I do have another exciting idea in the works at the moment.
Are we going to be privy to this information?
Oh, look, I can just start. Yeah, why not?
Just wanting to add that you heard it first on For Your Life.
This is the first time I've spoken about this. Okay, so I'm going to join forces with an incredible man that I actually met him at uni, and he's quite a force. He runs a lot of choirs and has done over the years in musical theatre classes and his own performing arts school, but he's often been in the country areas. I mean, he did all his study in London. Anyway, I had this idea to open an academy to be held on Sundays for young children, and it would incorporate, really high-level music tuition, but also special things like wellness sessions, sound healing, meditation, yoga. It's so important for young people, teenagers right now. It's more than ever we need that to look after their mental health. And it would incorporate sing, dance, acting classes, and it would just be a beautiful, happy place that would run for 3 or 4 hours on a Sunday where people could just go and have a beautiful time. And that's what we'd love to start. And I'm actually hoping that we might be able to use the South Melbourne Town Hall in a couple of years.
Wonderful. Yeah. Well, I'll certainly keep an eye out for that, and I would love to bring you back to have a talk about that once it's up and running. It just sounds like a wonderful idea, so I wish you all the best of luck with that.
Thank you.
It's been so lovely speaking to you and hearing all about your amazing life and your journey, and also the habits and the goals and the mindset that's helped you to achieve your success. And that's why I really wanted to talk to you today, because I think a lot of people can learn from your experience, your positivity, your perseverance, and having the right people around you to support you in doing that. So thank you for your time, and it's been lovely chatting with you.
Well, I mean, obviously life is very challenging. There are going to be moments of highs and lows for everybody. You can't avoid it. And I think it's good that we're talking about expectations before, not to just think that everything is going to be wonderful and positive in your life. Sometimes I think of it like riding the waves of life. There's ups and there's downs, and you just go for the ride and just expect that not everything is going to go well. But as long as you believe and love yourself and don't allow negative people in your life, surround yourself with beautiful people and people that are positive has really helped me over the years.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for those lovely words of wisdom, and look forward to speaking to you again in the near future.
Thanks, Shireen.
Rebecca didn't just want to learn how to play the piano. She wanted to be a concert pianist, and she was only 3. But it's one thing to dream it. It's another thing entirely to become it. It takes hard work and good habits. Rebecca's story is a great example of how the right mindset, determination, and good habits performed consistently over time have contributed to her success. And of course, having the right support around you all the time. You've been listening to For Your Life podcast, produced by Sound Cartel. Subscribe free to For Your Life wherever you're listening now.